All right, hello, Mary Shaw here. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm here today with Erik Kennedy from Learn UI Design. Hey, Erik, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mary?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for coming on the video here. So I've got a bunch of questions for Erik. For those of you who don't know him, Erik is the founder of a wonderful course called Learn UI Design and another new one called Learn UX Design that we'll be talking about in just a couple of minutes. But for those of you who might be watching who don't know you, Erik, can you just tell us a little bit who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So, yeah, my name is Erik Kennedy. I am a freelance UX and UI designer. And a couple of years ago, I also started teaching this online course called Learn UI Design. And actually, like you mentioned, the second one, Learn UX Design, just launched last month for the very first time. So it's way, way newer. But yeah, most of what I do is Learn UI Design and some client work too.
Cool, cool. So how many students have enrolled in Learn UI Design since it first opened?
Oh yeah, learn. So it's been surprisingly huge. When it first opened, I had no idea, like maybe 10 people will sign up or something. So I don't know the exact number right now, but it's certainly in excess of 1,000 people in the last 2 years have signed up. So yeah, it's been really cool.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Cool. Now, and what led you originally to seek a career in UX and UI design?
It was kind of roundabout. So I actually when I was in college, I took a programming course for the first time, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to go be a dev. And as soon as I got my first couple dev internships, I realized that being a developer for a real company is nothing like being a developer on your own little side projects or hobbies or whatever. And it's a little more structured, it's a little less fun. There's a lot more like abstract APIs and stuff you're dealing with. So it lost some of that interest to me, and ultimately I ended up becoming a PM, which then I did that for a few years. And sort of the same thing. I realized at some point that being a PM was cool, but it was also just sort of abstract. There was a lot of like sort of the political maneuvering of ideas to get stuff done, and that's fine for some people. But I think I just was like, I want to make something again. Like,
Hmm.
what's the best of both worlds? And I ended up in UX from there, and just sort of transitioning from that into the course. I mean, as a UX designer, I decided to go freelance before ever doing an official UX full-time gig.
Hmm.
And I just thought, oh, freelance will be this great way to get a kind of a breadth of experience, try my hand with a bunch of different projects from a bunch of different clients, and maybe if I really like one, then I'll settle down with them. And so, as you know, being a UX designer, it's great. I love all of the kind of the mental aspects of trying to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's never seen something, and sort of that like those psychological problems that you have to deal with. How do you make things simple and intuitive, and how do you ensure you're even making the right thing in the first place? But when you're a freelance UX designer, or at least this was my experience, I would hand off these nice wireframes, and they would, have these flows that were really usable and simple and intuitive, and that would all be great. But at some point, my client would be like, "Can you make this look like a real app? Can you make it look like the real thing?" And I was like, "Well, I I couldn't, but I sort of did what any good beginning freelancer should do, and said, sure, sure, I'll do this." And then scrambled desperately to try and figure out exactly how to make apps look good. And some of those lessons I ended up writing down into a Medium post in 2014. Ancient internet history, but you can still find it. It's called Seven Rules for Creating Gorgeous UI. And once I published that post, that was in 2014, and at this point, I think probably over 2 million people have read it. But the first million came pretty quick, and like a chump, I was like, "Oh wow, that's a lot of people," and did nothing about it. And then it didn't dawn on me until a couple years later that, hey, wait a second, writing down all these things that I sort of had to teach myself while learning visual design, all these little strategies and tactics that kind of make sense to a left brain like analytical person. Maybe there's some value to all these. Maybe I should do something with this. And that was sort of the seed that became Learn UI Design, and that just launched in 2017 for the very first time, but it's still going strong.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a nice segue to my next question. Got my little cheat sheet here. So why are you qualified to teach UI design, and what inspired you? Can you go a little bit deeper into what inspired you to create such a comprehensive course?
Yeah, I mean, qualified is an interesting way to put it, because certainly, like, I didn't go to art school, and my
Mhm.
course is very specifically for people who did not either and don't have the time or the money or the desire to do that. The course is very much for people who are already in industry. It's a very like, and current students are this even mix of devs. PMs. There's a couple UI designers who are in there just to brush up on stuff or hear something new. But for the most part, it's like UX designers, PMs, devs, and people working on their own side projects or working on their own startups. So it's this whole kind of mix of people who are in industry and they need like actual kind of tactical advice that they can watch one of these videos, and if they have an app that's currently out there or that they're designing and say they know the typography is bad, well, they can go watch a typography video and immediately improve it. So in that sense, like I that's the boat I've been in. Certainly, I was there years ago, and now I'm more just helping students kind of go through the same thing. They have something they're working on. It looks bad. What are the changes they need to make it look better? And just kind of building up from there.
Cool, cool. And that's these segues great again because this one of the things for me. I took the course in 2017, and it really upped my game. So thank you again for creating it. And I think one of those things that really differentiates your stuff, your UI course from the others, it's the way you focus on specific skills. You know, you really zero in on them one at a time. You know, for example, that the module on shadows, and all we do is
Hmm.
work on shadows, shadows, shadows. Um, so is that approach intentional, and why is that important, if so?
Yeah, it is intentional, and I like how you say that it's skill based. So just to be clear for your audience, I think it is Learn UI design is a skill-based course. I think maybe the other another way that I could have structured it but didn't structure it was let's build a portfolio together. Let's walk you
Hmm.
through one project step by step. We're going to start with like whatever at the very early stages of the design process, and then we're going to design a landing page, and then we're going to design the main page or what. I don't know how you could imagine doing something like that. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of boot camps kind of have that portfolio approach. We're going to build a
Yep.
portfolio step by step. That's what you end up with at the end of this course. Learn UI design is not like that. Like you mentioned, there is a video just on shadows. It's probably 30 or 40 minutes. That's the average video length. And all I do is talk about how do you apply shadows to like buttons? How do you apply shadows when the lighting looks like this? How do you apply shadows when you have a darker interface? There's all kinds of little changes that you need to know. And in that sense, it is intentional because in my own work when I was just starting out as a UI designer, and also in the work of my students, it's when I look at someone's screens and they say, "Hey, how do I make this look better?" It's rarely that there's some like overarching principle that they're missing or something like that, or some kind of, like I don't know. You hear talk about things like hierarchy and balance or whatever, and hierarchy is important, and I don't even know what balance means, but the things that I want to like hone in on to make better are very like targeted specific things. Oh, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you picked a font that is just not very good. Like, so switch up your font and this will look 80% better right away. Or with the shadows example, it's like, okay, all of these shadows are too dark. Maybe you should have a maximum of 25% opacity for shadows on a white background. Like, just do that, and they will, and it will look much better. But yeah, that sort of idea of targeting specific problems, honing in on those, and then making videos that just kind of dive deep into each skill. Some of that came from a book, and it's like based on a teaching methodology, Practice Perfect by Doug Lemov. It's like the
Yeah.
subtitle
Okay.
is like 42 strategies for getting better at getting better or something like that. But his whole idea, and as far as I understand it, it's pretty popular in teaching, is to get better at a very complicated skill. One of the most important things you can do is master the fundamentals. You break it down and you force yourself to actually practice those things. So especially the homework assignments, almost all of them, I'm like providing students with a sketch file where everything is done for them except what we talked about in that lesson. So in the shadows one, it's like this little mobile screen. At least it is currently. I update these things every once in a while. but it's this little mobile screen, and there's some cards, and there's some controls on the cards, and you basically just apply shadows to stuff. And so you have to think like, okay, do I want to do the card shadows as being like less deep? You can't even see my hands here. Like, are the cards sort of coming off the screen less, or is the button coming off the screen more? And what do I want to do with the opacity of these shadows? And it's just all you worry about is the shadows in that homework. So in that
Hmm.
sense, yeah, it's like just very intentionally skill based.
It's very cool. Very cool. So what is the biggest challenge facing students who enroll in Learn UI Design?
Um, Besides getting better at UI, I don't know. It's very interesting because, like I kind of mentioned earlier, um, it's not just one like demographic who waltzes into this course. It is a ridiculously even mix of like devs, PMs, UX designers, and people starting their own stuff. It's a lot of people who have already taught themselves certain skills and they're comfortable doing that again. Um, and so some people want to go and be freelance or have just started a freelance practice and want to get better at it. Some people are using Learn UI Design for getting better at work. You know, you're on a small team, maybe you don't have dedicated design resources, and so you need a kind of fly cover for some of the UI design. Um, and then there's people who are looking to break into the field in the first place who just aren't even in tech. So it really is a mix. I wouldn't say there's one particular problem.
So it's not one size fits all careers. It's nice,
Yeah.
nice variety. So how long does it take somebody to finish the Learn UI Design course if they enroll?
Yeah, yeah. Good question. I always tell people to think about it kind of like you would think about a college course or a university course, international, uh, at least at like a U.S. university, where if you're doing the course in conjunction with a couple other things of that size, if it's like maybe a quarter of your time, then almost 6 months.
Mhm.
But if it's really all you're focusing on, you could probably do it in like under 2 months. And some people do. They'll go through I'll know because they'll submit all the homework assignments and they'll just tear through everything in under 2 months. But to give you an idea, there's 20 hours of video. So imagine 20 hours of lecture, and then most of it's 40 odd lectures, maybe 41 right now. There's again, that number is going up over time. Um, but with these lectures, most of them, not all of them, but most of them have homework assignments, and the homework assignments typically take between 1 and 4 hours. I don't think people should take over 4 hours without checking in with
Yeah.
me, but yeah. So in that sense, like it's pretty comparable to a uh, a university level course, but just with very little fluff.
Whew. Yeah, I know. I'm still working on some of that homework. It's tough. It's but it's good. It's good. Um, so what sort of results are your students getting after they take the course?
Oh yeah, good question. So it's a lot of the things that I mentioned, people breaking into tech and either being able to successfully cover for UI stuff at work, or even getting a new job. I'm just on a different page here where some people have written in, and like one person's a designer at Capital One. This is just in the last couple of months. Designer at Capital One used it to improve at work stuff and let me know about it. Um, an engineer used it for work stuff and said he improved a whole bunch. Um, let's see. Another developer using it at work. Another developer who didn't specify. A product designer who used it at work. Yeah, actually, a lot of people who have used it at work. Here's someone who got a job at a design firm, a graphic
Cool.
designer who used it in their freelance career, another designer who thought it was very valuable, another developer, another, I'm not sure, but someone who talked about just kind of using the course to be able to speak design better and with clients or their boss. So like, I mean, it's just kind of the whole
Hmm.
mix of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a great result as we were talking earlier. I got a 6 month retainer with a client, and it's just it's phenomenal for my freelance career. So it's good stuff, man.
That's awesome. That's really cool to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah. So when does Learn UI Design open again?
Yeah, so given that people will be watching this video at all different times, it opens for the very next time next month, and that will be November of 2019.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And then now you recently launched this first version of your brand new UX course, and
Yes.
how has that been received?
Oh, it's gone very well. it I think I kind of start with low expectations. It's definitely exceeded those. We'll see though, because given that it launched for the very first time last month, no one has actually finished it. Like no one has submitted all the homework assignments and marked everything complete. So I suppose I really have to wait until we get to that point and see
Mm,
what results people start getting out of it. Yeah.
yeah, and it's comprehensive like the other course too, so it'll be a while, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Um, and when will you be opening that course again?
Probably sometime in the first half of 2020, but I'm not really sure. I think the majority of my audience comes to me to hear about UI design and to learn UI design. So for me to like talk about UX, maybe that's not as relevant. I just don't think that'll be something I'm talking about on, say, my mailing list quite as much as the
Mm,
UI course or
hmm.
something. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll
cool,
see. We'll see.
cool. Well, we're this is a quick interview, so we're on our way to wrapping up. So I have a couple of fun questions for you. So
Okay.
let's wind up with those. So Erik, dogs or cats?
Neither.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
hurt.
I once saw this tweet that someone like basically made a spreadsheet of different varieties of breeds, whatever breeds of cat that they could get, and they were trying to figure out like via spreadsheet what cat breed scores the best. And it turns out the answer, like any dog would have beaten any of the particular cats that they had listed. But I think I can't remember for sure, but I think no pet at all would have beaten all of them, because it's like stuff like how much noise does it make, or how much does it shed, or how much work do you have to put into it. It's just kind of all these downsides, and I'm like, you know what, I could do without that. I'm happy enough just visiting other people's pets momentarily while I'm at their house.
Yeah, we're very lucky my dog hasn't barked during this interview, so I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah, I'm
So
envious.
another fun question: beer or wine?
Oh geez. I would love to say beer. I like the variety in beer, but as I'm getting older, I just feel like it's like, are these carbs really worth it? I'll just have a glass of red wine. Yeah.
Well,
How
well
about you?
said.
What would it be?
I'm in the same boat. I'm a little older than you, and red wine is it wins the day over beer just because of the whole carb thing.
Yeah,
It definitely slows you down as you get older.
yeah.
Um, but anyhow, well, thank you so much for spending some time with me this afternoon. And where can people find more about you?
Oh yeah. Well, people watching this interview will probably want to go to learnui.design. That's the best place to go. That page specifically talks about the course, but you can also navigate to the blog in the top right. And the Learn UI Design blog just has, I don't know, probably a small novel at this point worth of free design content. There's a lot of stuff there. So if you've never seen the Learn UI Design domain or anything associated with it, go there, check out those the free content. And if people like that, then they may be interested in the course. Also, I have a design newsletter on that site too, which you can sign up for, and that's more just like free articles and some of that. Well, actually, most of the stuff on the newsletter never is on the blog. So if you want to read it all, sign up for the newsletter as well. And yeah, that's probably the main one. I'm like a little bit active on Twitter, but I've been very lazy about it. But sometimes I'll like tweet about design randomly. So there you go.
Cool. Well, I can heartily endorse Learn You. I designed the course and also the blog. Great content. It's a tremendous resource for the UX design community. At least I'm sure PMs and devs can get a lot out of it as well. So I wish you
Oh,
all the
thank you.
best. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, and keep designing. Keep doing great stuff.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Take care.